Hi, and welcome to the 2022-23 free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA, step-by-step instructions for high school seniors and parents. This recording is provided by Champions for Learning, the education foundation in Collier County, whose mission is to create life-changing learning experiences for every student with a vision of a community that is 100% engaged in support of student success. To learn more about Champions for Learning, visit www.championsforlearning.org. Champions for Learning is a partner in Future Ready Collier, which is a network of more than 60 organizations, businesses, schools, and community members working to ensure every child is ready for kindergarten and every young person enters adulthood with a vision and a plan to accomplish that vision. Future Ready Collier is the Collier partner supporting the 5-county Future Makers Coalition with the goal to transform Southwest Florida's workforce by increasing the number of college degrees, certificates, or other high-quality credentials from 27% to 60% by the year 2025. FAFSA completion is the #1 indicator of college going and provides access to a range of financial support to students. Champions for Learning partners with Collier County Public Schools and other community partners to leverage resources to support students and their families to complete the FAFSA. We play a lead role in providing resources, training volunteers, and facilitating FAFSA completion events. These screenshots were prepared by Champions for Learning and are provided by the Federal Student Aid and Office of the U.S. Department of Education. These are based on a fictional student and family situation, and they're really intended to be used for training purposes and to guide you through the FAFSA. So the first part before we even begin working on our FAFSA is to create an FSA ID username and password. We have a step-by-step video to help you complete that if you haven't already done so. You can view that video at championsforlearning.org/resources. Also, we have step-by-step instructions in English, Creole, and Spanish in paper. You can receive that by visiting collierschools.com/financial aid. Both the student and a parent will need a separate FSA ID username and password. This is what will enable you to digitally sign and submit your FAFSA once it's completed. If a parent does not have a Social Security number, that is okay. They won't be able to create an FSA ID, but they'll be able to print and sign a signature page within the FAFSA. It will not prevent the student from being able to complete and submit the FAFSA. Okay, so before we begin, a couple things that you're going to want to have handy. First, the student Social Security number or alien registration number. Your 2022 federal tax returns. That includes the parent and the student. Also a good idea to have the W-2s on hand for one of the questions that we'll see coming up. Any records of untaxed income that you may have received, your checking and savings account balances as of today, and any other investments that you may have other than the home that you currently live in. Also, as a tip, depending on the computer you're working from, you'll want to enable pop-ups before starting the FAFSA. The IRS data retrieval tool will be a pop-up from within the FAFSA, so you'll want to go ahead and enable that before we start the FAFSA. Now, once you've done all that, you're going to want to open a browser for the internet and go to FAFSA.gov, so FAFSA.gov. We do caution you that if you try to Google FAFSA, the first result that usually comes up is FAFSA.com. That is a separate site. It may look similar, but you want to make sure you're at FAFSA.gov. And once you're at that site, you'll see that it'll ask you if you are the student that's completing the FAFSA, a parent, or a preparer. The student or the information that we're going to be providing has the student driving the FAFSA and the student completing the FAFSA. So we're going to select that I'm the student and want to access the FAFSA form. And then we'll see it's going to ask us to log in to continue or create that FSA ID. So to be able to log in, that's the first time we're going to be using the FSA ID. Then on this page, we're going to type in that FAFSA ID username and the password. Notice you can click the show button if you're not sure if you're typing it in correctly. You want to make sure that you're typing that in correctly. If you're not sure, have a question about any of the fields when you're filling out the FAFSA, you'll notice at the end of each entry box, there's a little question mark with a circle. That'll give you a definition of what they're asking for, a little bit more information than the question itself. So at any point when you're completing the FAFSA, if you don't understand exactly what they're looking for, use that question mark. Little pop-up will appear and give you some more information. We're going to go ahead, enter that username and password, and click Login to proceed. Now it's going to give us a little caution, ask you to read this. This is a reminder that you're accessing a government website, that everything that you're being put, information you're putting in here, they're going to protect that information, but that it's also that you're putting in the information to the best and truest of your ability to do so. So take a moment, read through that, and accept or decline. Now you'll see it's got you logged in, so you see the student's name up at the top, and you'll see two options. You'll see 2022-23 and 2021-22. It's going to default to 22-23. That's the FAFSA that opened October 1st of 2021. That's the FAFSA that every high school senior is going to complete. This is going to give you aid starting in the fall of 2022. Perhaps you're a student that thinks you may be starting post-high school education in the summer right after you graduate. You're welcome to fill out the 21-22 also. That would use your 2019 taxes. However, we want to make sure you're getting that 22-23 FAFSA completed. So we're going to hit Start a New FAFSA Form. The other great thing about FAFSA is once you've completed your first FAFSA, every year that you're in school continuing that education, you'll fill out the FAFSA again. It opens October 1st, but in the future, you'll be able to hit Renew My FAFSA Form. So a lot of the information that we're going to enter in the beginning will follow you to next year's FAFSA, and you just have to confirm that it's all still accurate and true. So we're going to hit Start a New FAFSA. It's going to ask us to create a temporary save key. So if we're not able to finish the FAFSA today and have to come back at a later time or use a different device, we're going to have to create a save key. Again, you can hit that show button to make sure you're entering them both the same. This could be very simple, 4 digits. There's no password requirements for this save key. Do make sure, though, that you write it down in a safe place. A good idea to keep it with your FAFSA ID username and password. And we're going to hit the blue Continue. Now we're going to get some instructions. We don't need to read through all of these specifically unless you have a question that may apply to this. You can also get this information right from the FAFSA.gov website, so you don't have to enter the FAFSA itself. We're going to go ahead and hit the blue Continue. So now this information would be already brought into the FAFSA based on what we entered when we set up our FAFSA ID username and password for the student. When you're looking at the FAFSA, you'll notice along the top, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections, and the cursor will illuminate what section we're on. This is also a good hint around whose information we should be entering in that box. So again, we're just going to view and make sure that this information does line up and does match the student's information, and we'll hit Continue. Now it's asking for the student's email and phone number. Again, this should be transferred. If you didn't enter a phone number when you completed or set up your FAFSA ID username and password, this is a good place to enter one and hit Continue. Okay, now the student's address. This is your permanent mailing address, not where you'll be when you go to school. Go ahead and enter that and hit Continue. Okay, now it's going to ask the student's residency. So this is about the student. Has the student lived in Florida for at least 5 years? And is the student a U.S. resident? And you'll see there's 3 options there. Once you've selected that, you'll want to hit Continue. Now it's going to ask a couple questions around the student's education. We're going to walk through these question by question. This is where the majority of errors are made, especially for a high school senior completing the FAFSA for the first time. Some of our answers are going to be the same, so we're going to walk through these. What will your high school completion status be when you begin the 22-23 school year? Hopefully, we all have a high school diploma. For the next question, what will your degree or certificate be when you begin this 22-23 school year? So our answers may vary here. You may be working on a technical degree or certificate. You may be working on an Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, or first bachelor's degree. So even though our aspirations may be to go to law school, when we first begin college, we're going to be working on one of those lower level degrees to build and get there. Really critical we choose anything at a first bachelor's degree or lower. This lets the school know that you're going to be eligible for federal aid based on what you're pursuing. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 22-23 school year? So in most cases for high school students, that's going to be a no. You may be working toward an associate's through dual enrollment, but you wouldn't have enough for a full 4-year bachelor's degree. What will your grade level be when you begin the 22-23 school year? For all of our high school seniors completing the FAFSA, this answer is going to be never attended college first year. So even though we may be doing dual enrollment classes or have AP credits, that answer is never attended college first year, as we've never matriculated into a college. This is really important so that we're considered a first-time incoming college student and they award us the appropriate aid levels. And then it asks, are you interested in being considered for work study? If you're not familiar with work study, you're welcome to click the little question mark. It'll give you a further definition. That is a federal program. And so a school may determine that you have unmet need and can factor in you working on campus to help earn additional funds to pay for your tuition fees, books, etc. It does not guarantee you a job on the campus. It just takes that into consideration when budgeting the student. We recommend you hit yes. You're not required to. Again, it doesn't guarantee you a job on that campus. And click continue. Okay, now the questions are going to vary a little bit depending upon how we answer this question. It's going to ask, are you male or female? If you answer female, you will not see the following 2 questions, but if you answer male, it's going to ask, are you registered with the Selective Service System? And if you answer no, it will ask, do you want to register with the Selective Service System? A change to this year's FAFSA is that being registered for selective service no longer affects your eligibility for federal student aid. So you can say that you don't want to be registered and you will still be eligible for federal aid. The question is still here, so you want to make sure that you answer yes or no. Now it's going to ask for the student's driver's license information. If you have that, you can enter it. A state ID or learner's permit also. If you don't, this will not penalize you. You can go ahead and hit continue. Okay, now it's going to ask about a little bit about the student's family situation. So at any time where was the student a foster youth or in the foster care system, and then it's going to ask what was the highest school completed by parent 1 and parent 2. So if you're not familiar with which parent you should be using on the FAFSA, again, there's resources at callyourschools.com/financial aid that will walk you through which parent you should be using on the FAFSA. In general, the parent that you'll be using on the FAFSA is the biological parent that you live with at least 51% of the time. And if that parent is married, that parent that is married to would be parent 2. So parent 1 and parent 2 is not always your biological parents. It may be a parent and a step parent depending upon if parent 1 is remarried. If you're unsure of the highest school that's completed by parent 1 or parent 2, there is an option to answer other unknown. This is just a way for the financial aid office to try to determine if you're going to be considered a first-generation college student. Once you've answered, go ahead and select continue. Now it's going to ask you to enter your high school information. So you can enter the state, you can enter the city, you can even enter the high school's name, and then you're going to hit search. And once you hit search, you'll see a listing of the different schools that it populates. You'll want to click the radio button next to the name of the high school that you attend. And once you do that, it will pull it back into the FAFSA and ask you to confirm that it's correctly identified the high school that you're currently attending. So now it's going to ask you, what schools do you want to have your FAFSA sent to? You can select and add up to 10 schools to have your FAFSA sent to. Keep in mind, you don't have to have an acceptance from these schools. In fact, you don't even have to have applied to these schools to add them to your FAFSA. So if there's a school that's on your radar, we recommend you go ahead and add it to your FAFSA now. If you change your mind later on or need to add a school, you can come back in, and there's a new feature to just let you update those colleges very easily. But for now, we're going to go ahead and start searching for some schools to add to our FAFSA. So we're going to say that we want to go to look at schools in Fort Myers. Keep in mind, when we do that, that's going to bring up Florida Gulf Coast University and Florida Southwestern State College, as Florida Southwestern State College's main campus is in Fort Myers. So if there's a school that you're looking for that has more than one campus, FSW, University of South Florida is an example. They have campuses in St. Petersburg and in Tampa. You're only going to see the Tampa option listed because they operate under one federal school code. So this is separate from your application. You can tell on the application which campus you want to go to. This is just telling financial aid or FAFSA where to send your information to. Now, once you've selected up to 10 schools, you'll see a list like this with them all vertical. You'll want to make sure that that first school, the school that's in the first position, is a Florida public institution. So that can be a state college, that can be a state university, that can be a technical school. This is what alerts the state financial aid system that you're eligible for state opportunities or state aid. So we want to make sure a state school is in the first option. If you're not sure, you can Google to find out if they're public. Keep in mind that some universities, like the University of Miami, University of Tampa, even though they have university in their name, those are both private institutions and would not meet that requirement. So again, make sure it's a Florida public, state college, or state university or technical school. Also, the schools cannot see what order you list the schools in, nor can they see what other schools are on the list. So don't worry about putting schools in any order. They can't see any of that kind of information. Okay. Also, now you'll see it's going to ask you the housing plan for each one of the schools that you have put on your list. So you can select, I'm going to live on campus, I'm going to live with a parent, I'm going to select, or I'm going to live off campus. Now, even though your dream may be to live off campus in an apartment, financial aid isn't going to cover that. So if you want to be considered or have financial aid look at what the cost of living on campus in a dorm would be for your financial aid offer, you're going to want to select on campus. Now, this does not lock you in and make it a requirement that you live on campus. This doesn't guarantee you a dorm. This just tells the financial aid office, factor that in when you're calculating my cost of attendance. I want to be living on campus. So we recommend that you select on campus, unless it's truly a college that does not have that option, like Lorenzo Walker Technical College, where you would have to live either with a parent or off campus. Once you've done that for all your schools, you want to hit continue. Okay, now it's asking, what is the student's marital status? Again, this is as of today, the day that we're filling out the FAFSA, and select continue. Now it's going to ask if the student has dependents. So as of today, does the student have a child that they're supporting at least 51% or more, and will continue to support that child between July 1st of 2022 and 2023? Yes or no? And then also, does the child have other dependents other than children or spouse that they are supporting? This is about the student. So does the student have children? Does the student have other dependents? Now there's some additional questions about the student. This is to determine the dependency criteria for the student. So is the student serving in active duty? Are they a veteran? Since they turned 13, were both of the parents deceased? Were they in foster care, or are they a dependent ward of the court? Are they, as determined by a court in the state of Florida, an emancipated minor? Or does someone other than the parent or step parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in the legal state of residence? If none of those apply, you'll want to hit none of the above and hit continue. Okay, now it's going to ask, as of July 1st, 2021, was the student homeless or were they self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Keep in mind there is a definition for homeless here that you can pull up. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a place to sleep. It just means that it's not a permanent residence, and there's a definition there. If you think that you may need to answer yes to this question, we encourage you to reach out to your school counselor to ensure that you have a certificate of homeless or at-risk youth that will help you to complete the FAFSA process going forward. So please speak to your school counselor if you have any questions about that before hitting continue. Okay, so based on the questions we've answered, the FAFSA has determined that this student is dependent and will need to provide parental information to continue. Just a note about this. So in general, even though a student may turn 18 during their senior year, the FAFSA considers age for dependency at 24 years of age. So a student in general will have to provide parental information on the FAFSA until they turn 24, have their first bachelor's degree, join the military, or have a child that they support at least 51% of the time or more. There's a few other criteria there, but those are the main we see that impact our students. Once you've answered that you're going to provide parental information, you'll select continue. Now you'll notice we've moved to section 4. We're asking questions about the parents now. So now it's going to kind of back to where we were talking about which parents should we be using. It's going to ask which parents we're going to be using to complete the FAFSA. In this situation, we're going to say the parents are divorced or separated and they live with one parent more than the other. Again, this is a fictitious situation. So it's going to ask, as of today, what is the marital status of those parents? We're going to select that they were married or remarried and the date that that occurred. Okay, now it's going to ask for the parent information for the first parent. So this would be the biological parent. You can put in a social security number. Now again, here, if the parent does not have a social security number, that's okay. You can enter all zeros for a social security number. Keep in mind, a parent's citizenship status does not impact a student's eligibility for any type of aid. It's solely based on the student's citizenship. Also, this information is not shared anywhere outside of the FAFSA. So it's very well protected for the family's confidentiality. Then you'll enter the last name, first initial, date of birth, and email address. Keep in mind, again, this needs to be a different email address than the one that the student used. And you'll select continue. Okay, now if there's a parent 2, so if parent 1 is married, parent 2 is the spouse of parent 1. We'll want to enter that social security number if there is one. Again, if there's not, all zeros, the last name, the first name, and the date of birth, and we'll select continue. Now it's going to ask, have the parents lived in Florida for at least 5 years? These questions are asked to help to try to determine residency for in-state tuition purposes. You'll still have to provide additional documentation to the school once you enroll, but this gives financial aid a good heads up to start that process. Go ahead and select continue. Now we're going to calculate the household size. So it's going to ask, how many other dependent children do your parents have? This doesn't include you. So are there parents that are living in your house or that your parents are supporting at least 51% of the time and will continue to in the next year? So in this case, this student had 2 additional siblings that we added. The next question asks, how many other dependents do your parents have? These people need to be living in the household, currently receiving more than half of the support from your parents, and will continue to as well. So an example of this would be grandparents or relatives that may be living in the house that your family is helping to support. You would enter that number here and select continue. Now you'll see it's automatically calculated your household size at 5. In this situation, there was 1 automatically for the student, there were 2 parents, and then 2 other siblings. So they're calculating the household size at 5. Now, out of the 3 dependents, so the 2 siblings and the student, it wants to know how many will be in college in the next year. Your parents do not count, but you and the siblings do. So in this case, the number would be at least 1 for the high school student that's completing this FAFSA. But if there are other siblings that are in college or going to be in college within the next year, you would include them in this number as well. Okay, now it's going to start going into the financial information. So it's asking for 2020, have your parents completed their IRS income tax return? There'll be a drop down there. Once you select that answer, it'll then ask what type of form did they complete. If you're looking at your taxes, you can usually find this in the upper left-hand corner. Most traditionally, it's a 1040, a 1040A, maybe a 1040EZ. And then it will ask, what is the parent's tax filing status? So when you're looking at the taxes right underneath where the name and address are, you'll see a box where there'll be options for married filing jointly, single, head of household, and you'll want to match that to the taxes and use the drop down. So now, since this is a fictitious situation, we're not able to truly link to the IRS to show this piece. However, if this information matched up in the box here in the center where you see IRS data retrieval tool, it would have this blue box that says proceed to the IRS, where you would be able to then link to the IRS and have the information from those taxes pulled directly into the FAFSA. If this box is illuminated, we highly recommend attempting to import from the IRS. This will make the FAFSA completion process easier. It also will reduce, if you do get selected for verification process, you'll already have that information in there, so it'll be a little bit easier down the road for you. Keep in mind, though, you'll want to have those paper taxes with you, because when this pop-up occurs to link to the IRS, you're going to want to enter the address information exactly as it appears on the physical taxes that you have to get it to match. You'll only have a couple of opportunities to try to get that match to occur before it'll take you back and say, okay, it didn't work. You're going to need to enter the information manually, which is okay. We're going to walk through that in our example. But one tip, when you're looking at your taxes, if your tax preparer has typed your address as 123 Main Street and typed out the word street, S-T-R-E-E-T, but you type it in as street, S-T, it will not match. So you want to make sure you're entering it exactly. If they used all capitals, if you live in an apartment, see if your apartment number is listed truly under apartment number or if it's in a street address. So you'll want to make sure everything matches exactly. And then if you are successful at importing it in, it will then proceed to take you through the FAFSA. It will gray out those answers and it will indicate that you've automatically been able to transfer from the IRS. Again, in this fictitious situation, we're unable to link to the IRS. So we're going to walk through this scenario. So if you're unsuccessful, either way, you'll be able to see exactly what those questions look like. If you are going to try the IRS data retrieval tool, this is where the parent will need to enter their FSA ID username and password and click continue. Now we're back to where the questions are. So if we were able to link, this would be grayed out and say transferred from the IRS. In this situation, it's a fictitious situation, so we're going to go through and enter it all manually, which is fine. So because we answered on the previous question that we completed a 1040, if you'll look right above the answer box, it tells us exactly what line of the taxes we need to look at to find the answer. So what was your parents' adjusted gross income for 2020? We're going to look at line 11 on the 1040. Once we get that, we're going to hit continue. This is where those W-2s maybe come in hand. It's going to ask, so of that money that you just made, how much did parent 1 make and how much did parent 2 make? So it's splitting up the amount of the income. It also tells you this is where you can find it on these different forms. The W-2s are handy as well. Once you've entered that, hit continue. Okay, now it's asking if the parents filed a Schedule 1. If you're unsure what a Schedule 1 is, you can click that more information. It'll give you a little bit more and hit continue. Okay, now it's going to ask for the income tax paid. Again, if you're looking, it's going to say this is, in this case, it's line 22 minus Schedule 2, line 2, if there is one. If it's negative, enter a 0. We're going to hit continue. Okay, now these are some situations, they may not be applicable if there's nothing to report, You'll want to make sure you do answer at least a 0 in that field so you'll be able to continue through. Some of these will be things that you will find on the taxes. Some of these may be just special situations. So you'll want to read through each of these, see if they apply to your family, and answer accordingly before hitting continue. Now it's going to ask about child support being paid, earnings from under a cooperative education program. So read through all of these, see if any of these apply, and hit continue. And again, if they were any child support received, any special allowances, you'll want to read through each one of these. There's some questions around being a veteran, workers' compensation, disability. So read through each one of these, see if they apply. If they do, enter the correct amount. If not, enter a 0 and hit continue. Okay. If at any point it asks, do you want to skip questions about your parents' assets? It's saying, based on what you've entered and given us, we have enough information to go ahead and process, but it gives you the option to continue if you'd like. We recommend, if it's asking you to skip, to go ahead and hit yes. That means they've got enough clear picture for them to be able to award aid. So we're going to hit yes, we're going to skip, and we're going to continue. Now you're going to notice it looks like we're back to a page we've already seen, but you'll notice at the top, this is switched, and now it says students financial. So we've done the parents. We're now on section 6, asking about the student's financial situation. It's asking if the student filed taxes in 2020. So we may have students that worked but made under the federal filing requirement, did not have to file. So answer that question accordingly, whether the student filed or did not file. Hit continue. Again, it will give that student the opportunity to link to the IRS if they did file. If they worked but did not file, you'll want to enter the wages, salaries, and tips earned in 2020 in this information here and hit continue. If they did not work, that answer would be a 0. Okay, now keep in mind these questions apply to the student. So did the student pay any child support or have any of those situations occur? If so, enter the amount. If not, enter a 0 and continue. So again, same questions we saw on the parent side, just asking if any of these applied to the student. Answer accordingly and hit continue. And then just like we saw on the parent, it's now asking if we want to skip the remaining questions about the student. Again, we're going to hit yes, we want to skip, and continue. We're almost there. You'll notice we just hit section 7. So now on this screen, you're going to see a summary of every question you answered when you're completing the FAFSA. You're going to be able to scroll all the way down. It does give you an option to print this information. You don't need to. It's going to be emailed to you right after you complete. But if you see anything that looks incorrect, you're welcome to hit previous, go back and make that correction. If not, you'll want to hit continue, and it's going to take us over to a section to add our digital signatures. Now, because the student signed in with their FSA ID at the very beginning, they don't have to sign in again. It'll give the option to read through, hit agree, and it'll show that green indication that shows that they have signed with their FSA ID username and password. We have to do the same for the parent. Now, keep in mind in this situation, we had a parent that did not have a social security number. We entered all zeros. In this case, the parent could have an opportunity to print a signature page instead of signing electronically. So you'll see this little option to agree with the terms, hit continue. Everything you put on here was true and completed accurately. If the parent has an FSA ID username and password, they would click there to sign and submit the form. If a parent did not have a FSA ID username or a social security number, they could select print a signature page and then print the physical page. Now, keep in mind, it's going to show, if you were not able to do that, it's going to show it's unsigned. The FAFSA will not process the application until they receive that signature page, that physical signature page in the mail, and then they will marry the two, paper form along with the electronic, and process the FAFSA. So this drastically slows down the processing time, which is why we really encourage a parent that is eligible to receive an FSA ID username and password to do that and submit it electronically. Once you've done both of your signatures, you then can click the Submit My FAFSA Now button. and you'll get a confirmation page. So this gives you a little bit of information that you're going to receive some information in 3 to 5 business days from FAFSA. That's going to be your student aid report if everything was able to process successfully. If they need more information, they're going to contact you as well. So really important that you take a moment and read this page, and that you're checking the email that the student listed when they started their FAFSA, so you have any follow-up necessary. Also on this form, that's good pieces of information. At the very top right, you'll see a data release number, or a DRN. If for some reason you need to contact the FAFSA.gov directly for an issue or a resolution, or potentially even a school that you're applying to, if the financial aid office, they may ask for that data release number for confirmation that it is truly you. So you'll want to hang on to that. It'll be emailed to you as well. And then as you scroll down the page, the other piece of information that's very important on this is you'll see something called an EFC, or an estimated expected family contribution. So this is an estimate of how much they feel that your family can contribute to the cost of education. Keep in mind, this is not a bill. This is not what the school will bill you or say that you have to pay to go to school. So the lower this number is, the more need-based aid you'll be eligible for. Keep in mind, though, the FAFSA is also used in many private scholarships to award merit-based aid. So you'll want to complete the FAFSA every year to make sure that you're maintaining your eligibility for those additional funds. Also, keep in mind, you'll see here at the bottom, direct loan estimate. Every student that is a citizen that successfully completes the FAFSA will automatically be eligible for direct loans from our government to pursue your education. That does not mean you have to take the loan. It's just saying that you are eligible for the loan. So as a reminder, this is going to wrap up our training, but as a reminder, if you need more information, please visit callyourschools.com/financial aid, or you can visit championsforlearning.org/resources. If you have specific questions about financial aid or college access, you are welcome to reach out to me, Jessica Manchad, at 239-687-1370, or jmanchad@championsforlearning.org is my email. We encourage you to visit championsforlearning.org to learn more about the support that we provide to our community. And also, Future Ready Call Your Network partners have compiled a resource kit to help all students be prepared for higher education goals. You're welcome to download and access this for free at futurereadycallyour.org/resources. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for completing your FAFSA.